The diplomatic masquerade. The stars had never looked so cold. Captain Nora Blackwood pressed her palm against the viewport of the diplomatic vessel Harmony, watching the massive Zephyrian command station grow larger against the cosmic backdrop. Behind her, the soft hum of the ship's systems mixed with hushed conversations between her small human delegation. In just a few hours, she would be sitting across from beings who held humanity's fate in their scaled hands. Nervous? Dr. Marcus Vale's voice was barely above a whisper as he stepped beside her. His reflection joined hers in the darkened glass, and she could see the concern etched in his weathered features. Terrified, she admitted, her voice equally quiet. They stood close enough that their shoulders almost touched, a dangerous intimacy given the circumstances. Their relationship was the worst-kept secret among the crew, though officially it didn't exist. A military captain and a civilian scientist weren't supposed to find comfort in each other's arms during humanity's darkest hour. Marcus's hand brushed against hers, a fleeting contact that sent warmth up her arm. Whatever happens in there, I know. She turned slightly, meeting his brown eyes for just a moment. When we get home, no more hiding. When, he repeated, managing a smile that didn't quite reach his eyes. Not if. Behind them, young Jackson Pierce shuffled through his digital tablets, muttering under his breath as he reviewed talking points for the 100th time. At 24, the diplomatic aide still believed in the power of words to solve conflicts. Nora envied his optimism, even as she feared it would be crushed within the hour. "Captain," Jackson called out, his voice tight with excitement and anxiety. Ambassador Kethmore's preliminary demands just came through the quantum link. Nora forced herself to step away from Marcus and the viewport. "Let me see." The terms scrolled across the tablet in cold, clinical language, but their meaning was clear enough. Complete cessation of human expansion. Mandatory relocation of all colonies beyond the Terran system. Technology sharing agreements that would strip humanity of any defensive capabilities. And finally, the installation of Zephyrian advisors in all human governments. "Advisors," Marcus muttered, reading over her shoulder. "They mean overseers." Nora's jaw tightened. She had expected harsh terms, but this was barely disguised slavery. Still, she had to try. That was why she was here. Why Earth had sent its most decorated diplomatic officer instead of a general. Words before weapons. Peace before war, even if peace seemed increasingly impossible. The docking bay of the Zephyrian station was a marvel of alien engineering, all sweeping curves and bioluminescent panels that pulsed with an eerie blue light. The air tasted of ozone and something metallic that made Nora's teeth ache. As they walked down the ramp, their footsteps echoed in the vast space despite the sound-dampening fields. Ambassador Kethmore waited at the center of the bay, his 7-foot frame draped in ceremonial robes that seemed to shift color in the strange lighting. His reptilian features were unreadable, but Nora had studied Zephyrian body language extensively. The slight forward tilt of his head indicated superiority. The positioning of his arms suggested he viewed this meeting as a formality rather than a negotiation. "Captain Blackwood." Kethmore's voice carried the typical Zephyrian clicking undertones that their translators struggled to render properly. "How gracious of your species to finally accept our generous offer of guidance." "Ambassador," Nora replied, keeping her voice level. "I believe there may be some misunderstanding. We're here to negotiate terms, not surrender our sovereignty." A sound that might have been laughter rippled through the assembled Zephyrian officials. Kethmore's head tilted further, his golden eyes narrowing to slits. "Negotiate?" The word seemed to amuse him. "Young species, you misunderstand your position. Your ships are scattered toys. Your weapons are crude experiments. Your expansion threatens the order we have maintained for 3,000 years. He stepped closer, and Nora caught the predatory musk that clung to his scales. "We are not here to bargain. We are here to inform you of your new place in the galaxy." Behind her, Jackson made a small, choked sound. Marcus moved half a step closer, his presence a steady warmth at her back. Nora forced herself to stand straighter, to meet the alien's gaze without flinching. "Humanity has committed no crimes," she said firmly. "We've followed every treaty, respected every boundary. Our colonies were established in unclaimed systems." "Unclaimed by your limited understanding," Kethmore interrupted. "The galaxy belongs to those strong enough to hold it. You are not strong enough. You never were." The chamber fell silent except for the distant hum of the station's systems. Nora felt something cold settle in her chest. Not fear, but a terrible clarity. This had never been a negotiation. It had been a trap from the beginning. "I see," she said quietly. "And if we refuse your generous guidance?" Kethmore's expression didn't change, but something in his posture shifted. The officials around him stirred like predators scenting blood. "Then you will be taught the price of defiance," he said. "Your colonies will burn. Your ships will be scattered like dust. Your homeworld will learn to kneel, or it will learn to ash." The threat hung in the recycled air like a physical presence. Nora felt Marcus's hand brush against her lower back, a brief grounding touch that reminded her she wasn't alone. "In that case," she said, her voice carrying across the vast chamber, "I believe this diplomatic mission is concluded." She turned on her heel and began walking toward the docking ramp. Behind her, she heard Jackson scrambling to follow, his tablets cluttering as he tried to keep up. Marcus fell into step beside her, his presence both comforting and heartbreaking. "Captain!" Kethamore's voice carried a note of genuine surprise. "You would doom your species for pride?" Nora paused at the base of the ramp and looked back. The alien ambassador stood surrounded by his officials, all of them watching her with expressions that ranged from amusement to confusion. They truly hadn't expected her to walk away. "No," she said clearly. "I would preserve their dignity." As the airlock sealed behind them and the Harmony pulled away from the station, Nora finally allowed herself to tremble. Marcus was there immediately, his arms wrapping around her in the privacy of her quarters. "It's over," she whispered against his chest. "They never intended to negotiate. They've been planning this from the beginning. Then we go home," he said softly, his lips brushing her hair. "We warn them. We prepare." Through the viewport, the stars looked the same as they had hours before, cold, distant, uncaring. But somewhere among them, Earth waited. Humanity waited, and Nora Blackwood had just delivered the message that would change everything. The war had already begun. They just didn't know it yet. The betrayal's price commander, Zara Chen Okafor, had always been proud of her mixed heritage. Her mother's Chinese determination blended with her father's Nigerian resilience. That dual strength served her well as she watched her homeworld's defensive grid light up with enemy contacts. "Ma'am, we're reading massive energy signatures throughout the outer colonies," Lieutenant Morrison reported from the tactical station aboard the UES Defiant. It's not good." Zara's fingers gripped the command chair's armrests. The Zephyrians had struck while humanity's diplomatic mission was still in transit. The timing was too perfect to be coincidence. "Get me Colony Station 7, she ordered. "Priority channel." Static filled the bridge for long seconds before a young woman's voice crackled through the interference. "This is Private Elena Vasquez, Colony 7 Marine Detachment." "We're under attack!" They came out of nowhere, massive ships, weapons we've never seen. On Colony 7, Elena pressed herself against the bulkhead as another explosion rocked the station. Beside her, Tommy Wright, her childhood friend from the farming domes, clutched a stolen alien weapon with shaking hands. "Tommy, we have to move," she whispered, her dark eyes scanning the smoke-filled corridor. They'd grown up together on the agricultural station, but their friendship had always carried something deeper. Now, with death surrounding them, those unspoken feelings burned brighter than the fires consuming their home. "The evacuation pods are this way," Tommy said, his usually cheerful face grim with determination. He'd always been the optimist, the one who made her laugh during long work shifts. Seeing him like this broke something in her chest. An alien soldier rounded the corner, tall, scaled, carrying a weapon that hummed with lethal energy. Elena didn't hesitate. Her military training kicked in and 3 precise shots dropped the creature before it could raise its gun. "How did you—" Tommy started. "Later," she cut him off, grabbing his hand. The touch sent electricity up her arm despite the circumstances. "We move now." They ran through corridors that had once been familiar. Past hydroponics labs where they'd shared their first kiss at 16. Past the observation deck where they'd watched Earth rise over the station's horizon. Everything was burning now. "Elena!" Tommy called as they reached the evacuation bay. "If we don't make it, don't." She turned to face him, her hand still in his. "Don't you dare give up on me now, Tommy Wright." He pulled her close, their foreheads touching. "I love you," he said simply. "I've always loved you." "I know," she whispered back. "I love you too." Their kiss was brief but fierce, tasting of smoke and desperation and hope. Then they were running again, toward the escape pods, toward survival. Back on the Defiant, Commander Zara watched her screens fill with casualty reports. Colony 7 was falling. Colony 12 had gone silent. New Shanghai Station was requesting immediate evacuation. "Commander," her communications officer called out, "we're receiving a priority transmission from Captain Blackwood's diplomatic vessel." Nora Blackwood's image appeared on the main screen, her face haggard but determined. Behind her, Dr. Vale worked frantically at a console while young Jackson Pierce coordinated with other ships in the small diplomatic fleet. "Commander Chen Okafor," Nora's voice was steady despite the chaos visible in her ship's bridge. "The negotiations have failed completely. The Zephyrians planned this attack from the beginning. We're looking at systematic genocide." Zara felt ice in her veins. "Captain, what are your orders?" "Survive," Nora said simply. "Save who you can. And get word to Earth. Humanity needs to know that diplomacy is over." The connection cut as Zephyrian jamming intensified. Zara turned to her crew, seeing her own grim determination reflected in their faces. "All ships, this is Commander Chen Okafor," she broadcast on all frequencies. "Implement emergency protocols. Scatter the fleet. Our new mission is survival and intelligence gathering. We need to know how many ships they have, what their capabilities are, and where they're going next." On Colony 7, Elena and Tommy reached the evacuation bay just as the final transport prepared to launch. Other survivors crowded around. Families, workers, the handful of Marines who'd managed to fall back in good order. "That's the last one," the transport pilot called out. "Everyone aboard!" As they strapped in, Elena caught sight of the alien fleet through the transport's viewport. Massive ships hung in space like dark predators, their hulls gleaming with an oily iridescence. Smaller craft swarmed around them, fighters and bombers finishing off the station's defensive platforms. "Look at the size of them," Tommy breathed beside her. Elena squeezed his hand. "Size isn't everything," she said, surprising herself with the steel in her voice. "My grandfather used to tell stories about the old wars on Earth. Sometimes the bigger they are, the harder they fall." The transport shuddered as they cleared the station's debris field. Behind them, Colony 7 died in a bloom of nuclear fire. Elena watched her childhood home disappear and felt something harden in her chest. The Zephyrians had made a mistake. They thought fear would break humanity. They were about to learn how wrong they were. In the command center of the alien flagship, General Korath reviewed the battle reports with satisfaction. His species had conquered dozens of younger races over the centuries, and the pattern was always the same. Shock, despair, surrender. "The human defensive positions are collapsing ahead of schedule," his aide reported. "Resistance has been minimal." Korath's reptilian features shifted into what might have been a smile. "As expected, these mammals lack the spine for true warfare. Within a cycle, they will be begging for mercy." But deep in the asteroid fields of humanity's outer territories, shadows moved. Ships that the aliens had never seen, carrying weapons they'd never imagined. The survivors of the first attacks scattered like seeds on a cosmic wind, carrying word of the betrayal to every human world. And in hidden facilities throughout human space, signals began to pulse. Codes that had waited in silence for decades suddenly came alive. The Zephyrians had won the first battle. They had no idea what they'd awakened. The hidden arsenal professor Diana Reeves had been waiting for this day for 37 years. Deep in the Ceres facility, buried within the asteroid belt's largest rock, she stood before a sight that would have made the Zephyrian High Command tremble. Row upon row of sleek black vessels filled the hidden docking bays, their hulls drinking in the light like hungry shadows. "Project Nightfall is operational," she reported to the holographic image of Admiral Cross, her voice steady despite the magnitude of the moment. "All vessels report ready for deployment." The Admiral's weathered face showed grim satisfaction. "How many, Diana?" 347 ships of varying classes, she replied, her fingers dancing across the control interface. "Plus 16,000 fighters and bomber drones." The Zephyrians won't know what hit them. In the pilot's briefing room, Captain Rikerstone checked his flight suit one final time. The experimental craft he'd be testing had no name yet, just a designation, X-47 Wraith. But if today's trials went well, it would be the spearhead of humanity's response. "Nervous?" Lieutenant Cora Kim asked from the pilot station beside his. Her Asian features were calm, but he could see the tension in her shoulders. Terrified, he admitted with a grin that had charmed women across 3 star systems, but the good kind of terrified. They'd been flying together for 2 years, ever since Cora transferred to the Black Ops division. What had started as professional respect had slowly become something more. She was brilliant, fearless, and had a laugh that could light up a room. He just hadn't found the courage to tell her how he felt. "Riker," she said quietly, "after this mission." "After," he agreed, understanding. They both knew that after might never come, but it was worth hoping for. The Wraith launched from the asteroid's hidden bay like a dart from a crossbow. Unlike traditional human ships, it made no sound, produced minimal heat signature, and bent light around its hull in ways that made targeting nearly impossible. "Holy hell," Riker breathed, as the ship responded to his thoughts rather than his hands. The neural interface was smoother than anything he'd ever experienced. "Cora, are you seeing this?" "Copy that." Her voice came through their private channel. "The stealth systems are incredible. I'm showing 0 detection on all frequencies." They flew in formation toward the test range, their ships invisible against the stars. Behind them, the Ceres facility disgorged more vessels, larger ships that would serve as destroyers and carriers. Each one represented years of secret development, funded by black budgets and hidden from the galaxy's prying eyes. Professor Reeves watched the deployment from her command center, feeling a mixture of pride and sorrow. These ships had been born from humanity's deepest fears, the knowledge that their diplomatic nature made them vulnerable to more aggressive species. Every component had been salvaged from alien wrecks, reverse-engineered, and improved. "Professor," her aide called out, "we're receiving reports from the outer colonies." "The Zephyrian attacks are accelerating," Diana nodded grimly. She'd seen the casualty reports. Entire worlds going dark, families scattered to the solar winds. But those losses wouldn't be in vain if they served to mask humanity's true response. "Begin Phase 2, she ordered. Full deployment of all assets. Across the asteroid belt, more hidden facilities came online. On Vesta, massive railguns emerged from camouflaged positions. On Pallas, fighter squadrons prepared for launch. Even tiny Hygeia revealed manufacturing bays where automated systems churned out weapons at an unprecedented rate. The Zephyrians had made a critical error in their intelligence gathering. They'd observed humanity's official military, the ships that patrolled openly, the bases that appeared on public records, the weapons that were demonstrated at diplomatic events. They'd never suspected that a species capable of hiding its feelings might also be capable of hiding its fangs. In the cockpit of his Wraith, Riker felt those fangs extending. The test targets, derelict ships positioned throughout the belt, made perfect practice runs. His weapon systems locked onto the first target, an old frigate that had been stripped of everything valuable. "Fox 1, he called, triggering the plasma lance. The beam that emerged from his ship was invisible to the naked eye but devastating in its effect. The frigate simply ceased. No explosion, no debris field. The molecular bonds holding it together dissolved, leaving only constituent atoms drifting in space. "Jesus," Cora whispered. "What kind of weapon is that?" "The kind that wins wars," Riker replied, but his voice carried no satisfaction. These weapons were necessary, but they were also terrifying. Humanity was about to introduce the galaxy to concepts it had never imagined. On the Zephyrian flagship, Intelligence Officer Zarthul reviewed the latest reports with growing confusion. Human resistance in the outer colonies had been fierce but predictable. However, several reconnaissance squadrons had simply vanished without sending distress signals. "General Korath," he reported to his superior, "I recommend increased caution in our advance. The humans may possess capabilities we haven't accounted for." The general's response was a dismissive hiss. "Impossible. We have complete intelligence on their military capabilities. Continue the advance as planned." But Zarthul had survived 3 centuries by trusting his instincts, and his instincts were screaming warnings. Somewhere in the dark between the stars, something was moving. Something that his sensors couldn't detect and his weapons couldn't target. Back on Ceres, Professor Reeves received the final confirmation she'd been waiting for. All hidden facilities were operational. All ships were armed and ready. The trap had been set. "Admiral," she reported to the holographic image of Nathan Cross, "the Zephyrians have committed 60% of their fleet to the attack on human space. They're stretched thin and focused on targets they think matter. And our response? Diana allowed herself a small smile. Let them learn what happens when you corner a species that spent 30 years preparing for this exact scenario. The hidden arsenal of humanity was about to reveal itself, and the galaxy would never be the same. The Tide Turns Admiral Nathan Cross had waited 43 years for this moment. Standing on the bridge of the UES Retribution, humanity's newest and deadliest warship, he watched as his fleet materialized from the darkness like angels of vengeance. 300 ships that had never appeared on any registry, crewed by personnel who officially didn't exist, armed with weapons that violated every known law of physics. All ships report ready. Admiral, his tactical officer announced. Captain Eva Sato's voice carried across the communication channel from her fighter squadron. Call sign Phoenix Wing. We have target lock on the Zephyrian battle group. Nathan nodded, his weathered face set in granite lines. Execute Operation Crimson Dawn. The battle began not with explosions, but with silence. Humanity's new weapons didn't announce themselves with fire and thunder. They simply deleted their targets from existence. Aboard her fighter, Eva Sato felt her heart racing as she led Phoenix Wing into the attack formation. Her fighter was unlike anything humanity had ever built, sleek, silent, and equipped with enough firepower to crack a battleship's hull. Phoenix lead to Phoenix Wing, she called over the squadron channel. Remember your training. Stay tight, stay invisible, and show these bastards what happens when you mess with Earth's children. Behind her, Sergeant Jake Morrison secured the last of his boarding gear. As a Void Marine, his job was to capture alien vessels intact, a task that had seemed impossible until humanity's new technology made enemy shields irrelevant. Eva. Jake's voice came through their private channel. The intimacy clear despite the military protocol. Promise me you'll be careful out there. Eva smiled despite herself. They'd been dancing around their feelings for months, ever since that night in the recreation deck when they'd talked until the ship's morning watch. Jake was everything she'd never thought she wanted, steady, protective, unshakably loyal. But somehow he'd become everything she needed. You too, Marine, she replied. Don't go getting yourself spaced on some alien ship. Wouldn't dream of it, flyboy. The first Zephyrian ships died without knowing they were under attack. One moment they were pursuing fleeing human civilians. The next they were expanding clouds of superheated plasma. The alien formation began to shift, confusion evident in their movements. Unknown attack pattern detected. Warlord Vexnar snarled from his flagship's command deck. He was old even by Zephyrian standards, his scales bearing the scars of a dozen conquered worlds. Where are they firing from? His tactical officer's voice carried uncertainty for the first time in decades. Unknown, Warlord. Our sensors show no enemy vessels in range. Another ship died, its hull cracking like an egg as something tore through its molecular structure. Then another. The proud Zephyrian battle line began to collapse into defensive clusters, their commanders struggling to fight an enemy they couldn't see. Eva's fighter squadron struck like lightning, appearing from stealth at point-blank range. Her plasma cannons carved through a cruiser's armor as if it were paper, while her wingmen targeted the ship's weapon systems with surgical precision. Phoenix Wing. This is Phoenix Lead, Eva called as they vanished back into cloak. First pass complete. All targets neutralized. Proceeding to Phase 2. Phase 2 was Jake's domain. As Eva's squadron disabled enemy ships, Jake's boarding teams struck. The Marines materialized inside alien vessels through personal teleportation technology that the Zephyrians had never imagined possible. Team 1. We're inside the command ship, Jake reported as his squad materialized on the enemy bridge. The aliens spun toward them in shock, reaching for weapons that would never clear their holsters. The firefight was brief and brutal. Zephyrian warriors who had conquered worlds found themselves facing humans who fought with desperate fury. Jake moved through the engagement like a dancer, his enhanced reflexes and advanced armor making him nearly untouchable. Bridge secured, he reported, stepping over the body of the ship's captain. Proceeding to engineering. On the Retribution's bridge, Admiral Cross watched his tactical display with grim satisfaction. The Zephyrian fleet, once so proud and seemingly invincible, was coming apart like a house of cards. Sir, his communications officer called out, we're receiving surrender requests from 17 enemy vessels. Negative, Cross replied without hesitation. They showed no mercy to our colonies. They'll receive none from us. The battle raged for 3 hours, but the outcome was never in doubt. Humanity's technological superiority was overwhelming, their tactical coordination flawless. Ships that had taken decades to build died in seconds. Crews that had trained for centuries found themselves helpless against weapons they couldn't understand. Warlord Vexnar watched his fleet die around him and felt something he'd never experienced before: true fear. His species had ruled through strength for millennia, crushing younger races with overwhelming force. But the humans weren't fighting like a younger race. They were fighting like apex predators who had been pretending to be prey. "Send a priority transmission to High Command," he ordered, his voice heavy with defeat. "Full retreat." The humans are not what we thought. His flagship shuddered as Eva's squadron made another attack run. The bridge lights flickered as power systems failed. Through his viewports, he could see Jake's Marines moving through his fleet like wolves among sheep. "Warlord," his aide reported, "the humans are jamming our retreat signal." Vexnar's blood ran cold. They weren't just losing. They were being hunted. Eva's fighter danced between enemy fire, her enhanced reflexes allowing her to anticipate attacks before they were made. Each victory brought her closer to Jake, closer to a future where they might have the luxury of being afraid. "Jake," she called over their private channel, "how's the collection going?" "Package secured," he replied from inside another captured ship. "These intelligence files are going to make Command very happy." As the last Zephyrian ship died in fire, Admiral Cross allowed himself a moment of satisfaction. Humanity's hidden arsenal had worked perfectly. Their decades of preparation had paid off, but this was just the beginning. The real war was yet to come. The New Order President Luna Rodriguez stood before the assembled Galactic Council, her presence commanding the vast chamber in ways no human had ever managed before. Where once humanity had sent diplomats and ambassadors, now they sent their leader backed by the mightiest fleet in known space. The council chamber itself bore scars from recent battles. Several species' seats sat empty, their representatives having fled when humanity's true power became clear. Those who remained watched the human president with expressions ranging from fear to grudging respect. "Honored delegates," Luna began, her voice carrying clearly across the chamber. "We gathered today not to negotiate humanity's place in the galaxy, but to establish it." In the diplomatic gallery above, Captain Nora Blackwood watched with satisfaction. Beside her, Dr. Marcus Vale squeezed her hand gently. Their relationship was no longer hidden. In the new galaxy emerging from the ashes of the old order, humanity no longer felt the need to hide anything. "The Zephyrian Empire believed strength gave them the right to rule," Luna continued. "They discovered that strength without wisdom leads only to destruction. Their former territories now fall under human protection." A ripple of sound passed through the chamber. Species that had cowered under Zephyrian rule for centuries suddenly found themselves with new protectors. Others, who had benefited from the old system, faced an uncertain future. Hierarch Mektar of the Altarian Collective rose from his crystalline seat. His species had been neutral in the conflict, watching from the sidelines as the galaxy's power structure shifted. "President Rodriguez," his translated voice carried a note of careful respect, "the Altarian Collective wishes to formally recognize humanity's sovereignty and propose a mutual defense agreement." Luna nodded graciously. "The offer is noted and appreciated, Hierarch. Humanity is always willing to work with species that share our values of dignity and self-determination." The careful phrasing wasn't lost on anyone present. Humanity was drawing new lines in space, not based on fear or conquest, but on principles. Those who embraced those principles would find powerful allies. Those who opposed them. Commander Zarachen Okafor entered the gallery quietly, taking a seat near Nora and Marcus. Her mixed heritage had once made her an outsider in some human circles, but in the new order emerging from the war, diversity was strength. "How goes the integration?" Nora asked quietly. "Better than expected," Zara replied. "The former Zephyrian colonies are actually welcoming our peacekeeping forces. Turns out, decades of oppression make liberation look pretty good." Below them, Luna addressed the Council's remaining concerns with the same calm authority she'd shown throughout the war. Questions about territorial boundaries, trade agreements, and security arrangements, all the mundane details that followed the dramatic reshaping of galactic civilization. On the outer rim of human space, Eva Sato's fighter squadron patrolled the new borders. Her pilots flew in perfect formation, their ships serving as both guardian angels and subtle reminders of humanity's reach. "Phoenix lead to Phoenix wing," Eva called over the squadron channel. "Sensor sweep complete." All quiet on the frontier. In the Marine barracks below, Jake Morrison finished his patrol report and allowed himself a smile. Eva would be back from her patrol soon, and they'd finally have time for the dinner they'd been planning since the war ended. Their relationship had grown stronger through the crucible of combat, but now they faced a different challenge, learning to love each other in peace rather than war. It was a challenge Jake looked forward to. The transformation of galactic civilization hadn't happened overnight. In the months following humanity's victory, species after species had sought accommodation with the new power. Some came seeking protection from other aggressors. Others came offering technologies and resources in exchange for security guarantees. A few, like the remnants of the Zephyrian military, chose to continue fighting. They learned quickly that humanity's mercy had limits. "The galaxy is changing," Luna concluded her address to the Council. "The old order based on fear and domination is ending. In its place, we offer something new. A community of worlds based on mutual respect and shared prosperity." She paused, her gaze sweeping across the assembled delegates. "But make no mistake," she continued, her voice carrying steel beneath the diplomacy. "Humanity will protect this new order. We've learned the cost of weakness, and will never pay it again." As the session ended and delegates began filing out, Nora and Marcus made their way down to the chamber floor. Luna embraced them both, her relief evident now that the formal proceedings were over. "Well done," Nora said quietly. "You've given us everything we fought for." "We gave ourselves everything we fought for," Luna corrected. "All of us. Every human who died defending our colonies. Everyone who worked in secret to build our fleet. Everyone who refused to surrender when surrender looked like the only option." Marcus nodded, his arm around Nora's waist. "So what now? We've won the war, established our dominance. What's the next chapter?" Luna smiled, looking through the chamber's great viewport at the stars beyond. "Now we learn how to be the species we always claimed to be. Protectors instead of conquerors. Leaders instead of followers." In the weeks that followed, the new order solidified. Human fleets patrolled trade routes that had been pirate-infested for decades. Human diplomats mediated disputes that had simmered for centuries. Human engineers shared technologies that improved life for billions of beings across thousands of worlds. The galaxy learned that strength could serve justice instead of tyranny. But in the quiet moments between ceremonies and speeches, in the private spaces where hearts were revealed, the real victory was simpler. Elena Vasquez and Tommy Wright were married on New Geneva, their wedding attended by survivors from dozens of worlds. Riker Stone and Cora Kim took leave to explore the Outer Rim together, their relationship finally free to grow without the shadow of war. Ava Sato and Jake Morrison found a small apartment on Luna, where they could watch Earth rise over the horizon and plan a future full of possibilities. And in a quiet garden on Mars, Nora Blackwood and Marcus Vale renewed vows they'd never been allowed to speak, surrounded by friends who had shared the journey from humanity's darkest hour to its brightest dawn. The stars looked different now, not cold and threatening but full of promise. Humanity had learned to reach for them not as supplicants, but as equals. The Crimson Awakening was complete. The galaxy belonged to those strong enough to protect it wisely, and humanity had proven they were strongest of all.